Hi, welcome to engVid.com. I'm Adam. In today's video, I'm going to talk to you about adjective clauses, but very specifically, adjective clauses with prepositions. Now, I know that this gives people a hard time. It's a little bit tricky. It's not really for beginners, but again, beginners can also figure out how to use these. Let's start with what are prepositions. So prepositions are these little directional words that are used to show some sort of relationship between things in a sentence, okay? For example, of, in, about, okay? At, on, all kinds, for, to. We have lots and lots of prepositions in English. All of them have very specific functions, but what we're going to look at specifically is how they are part of an adjective clause or a relative clause, depending which way you want to call it. So let's look at an example sentence to start. The book in which she discusses her long career is a real eye-opener. Okay? So what I'm doing here, I have my preposition and my relative conjunction that is showing basically an adjective clause, and it's going to be describing the book. Now, the reason I think that people have a bit of a hard time with this is they don't know, first of all, which preposition to use, and they don't understand what the relationship is when you're putting it at the beginning of a clause. So the easiest way to understand this is to basically separate the sentences or the clauses into two separate sentences. The book is a real eye-opener. So you still have your independent clause. This is your independent clause. This is the actual sentence itself. And then you take your adjective clause and make it into another independent sentence, okay? In the book, so I still have the reference to the book. In the book, she discusses her long career. So now I have the two sentences separated. Now the key to remember is that I still need to have in, because I'm talking about what is in the book. Okay, that's the main idea. I'm talking about what is in the book, not about the book in terms of other contexts, in terms of other relationships. So now all I want to do is I want to take this sentence, this independent clause, and turn it into an adjective clause to say something about the book. So I must keep the preposition. If you have a preposition as part of the description, you must keep the preposition. And what do? You're going to replace the subject again, it in this case, or in the book, and you're going to put a relative clause, which. In which the book, in the book, she discusses her long career. The book is a real eye-opener. So it's the exact same meaning, and I'm just putting the relative conjunction right next to the noun it is describing. And notice, I can do this with a non-defining adjective clause. I can also do it with a defining adjective clause, and we're going to look at that in a moment. Okay? So that's the key. The most important thing to remember is where to put the preposition and which preposition you're going to use. So if you're reading a sentence that uses a prepositional relative clause, just try to rearrange it so you understand why or what the function of the preposition is. Let's look at this sentence. The role, now when we talk about acting or actors, they have a role. They have a particular character that they're playing. The role that she is most remembered for was as Princess Leia. Okay? So we're talking about a specific actress, and she's very famous, but she's very famous for playing Princess Leia in Star Wars. Now, what can I recognize here? So here's my relative clause, the role. I'm identifying which role, right? Which specific role. She is remembered for. So she's remembered for, again, the role. So now, if I want to convert this into a prepositional relative clause, I move for, here, the role for. Now, one thing you need to remember about adjective clauses with prepositions, because prepositions must be followed by an object, okay, after a preposition, you're going to have an object. So in that case, you can only use which or whom. You can't use that, you can't use who, okay? You have to use which or whom after the preposition because these are going to be the objects of the preposition. So I have to take out that and I have to put which. The role for which she is most remembered, and I take it out of there, was as Princess Leia, or is as Princess Leia. Sorry, let me check that. I have to match them. You don't always have to match them. I'll talk about that a little bit separately. But that's basically what you're doing in terms of ordering, okay? We're going to look at a few more examples just to make sure you understand. Okay, so we're going to look at a few more examples because a couple other points I want to show you, okay? The candidate about whom very little is known appears to be the dark horse of the race. The dark horse means the one that nobody really expected to win, so the surprise, but that's not the point. The candidate appears to be the dark horse. Very little is known about him. So first of all, what I did, very little is known about him. About him was at the end. I moved it to the beginning because remember, an adjective clause is going to come right after the noun that it is describing or identifying. So if I put it, very little is known about him, in a separate sentence, no problem. If I want to put it right next to the noun, whom is the candidate? About the candidate, very little is known. You can use it in active, you can use it in passive. Here we're using it in passive, which is why there's no subject here. Okay, very important to keep that in mind when we look at the next sample. The top 10 salespeople. Now, I have 10 people. 5 of these 10 people broke sales records, okay? So the top 10 salespeople, 5 of whom? 5 of them, 5 of the salespeople broke sales record. Here is the subject of the clause. Here, this is the verb. Here, 5 of whom? This is not the subject. It's very important to remember that when you're using a preposition in the adjective clause, it's always going to be the object pronoun. Whom, which. Not that, not who. Those are subjects, okay? They can't be used as objects. So this is your subject. Another one. She went on air to share her story. Now, another thing, just like we can put an adjective, a regular adjective clause in the middle of the sentence or at the end, you can still do that with the preposition. She went on air to share her story, the gist of which is that this and that happened, okay? The gist means the basic idea, the main message is this. So, the gist of which is the story. Now, all I need to do is put a period here. She went on air, like radio, TV, whatever. She went on air to share her story. The gist of the story is that she was saved, okay? And then I can just put it like that. The gist of which. Here's your subject, gist is. The gist is. Gist of what? Of the story. Another thing to point out. Here I have broke, past. Here I have future. You can mix the verb tenses as long as it makes sense. Past and past, past and present, past and future. Again, those are not really dependent, but that's going to be a different lesson about mixing tenses in a video. Now, I just want to go back to that other one. I forgot to mention this before. I just want to compare it to this one. The book in which she discusses. I just want to make sure you understand. There's always going to be a subject because you're always going to use an object relative pronoun. Even if it's a number, it's still the subject. That's a very important thing to remember. And then, which preposition do you use? The same preposition that you would use if you split the sentence into 2 independent clauses. The prepositions, all prepositions have they have specific functions, okay? Of, for, to, all of them have more than one function, in, on, at, more than one function. Make sure you're using the correct preposition with whom or which, okay? And that's basically all there is to it. It's actually very straightforward. It's just if you understand adjective clauses, relative clauses, then you can also understand relative clauses with prepositions. They look tricky, but they're not tricky. Just think about the function and the positioning, and it should be pretty easy to understand. But just in case, go to engVid.com and take the quiz. Make sure you understand how to use this style of writing and speaking, of course. If you like the video, give us a like. And if you really like it, please subscribe to my channel. And I'll come back for more grammar, vocab, other types of lessons here at engVid. See you soon.